Draft Code of International Law Commission on state responsibility. And if you look at the draft code, then I told you that Law Center 2, article number 2, that is very important. Article 2 of ILC Draft Code laid down 2-3 important things. First was that there must be an international obligation on the state. And second was that there must be a breach of that international obligation committed by that state. So suppose if you want to hold a state responsible, you must establish that the state in question was having some international responsibility on it. And then the second step that you will have to establish will be that whether there was a breach committed by that state vis-a-vis the international obligation. And then the third step, which is very difficult. Yeah. So normally we say that, okay, the state has committed a wrongful act. Normally we say that a state has breached its international obligations. But the third important thing, which is very, very difficult to prove in the court, is that whether the conduct in question can be attributable to the state or not. And if you cannot do it, you can't hold the state responsible. And this is what is the essence of Article 2, paragraph A, which says that the wrongful act of a state must be attributable to the state under international law. So these rules of attribution, I started to tell you yesterday that the rules of attribution, how can you attribute the conduct of a state or a conduct of the organs of a state onto the state. So these are the rules of attribution. I told you ILC Draft Code is there. In the ILC Draft Code, there are 8 rules of attribution. And I told you yesterday that at least 5 rules of attribution must be properly understood by you. And those 5 rules start from Article 4 and it goes up to Article 8. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These 5 rules of attribution are very important. I tried to make you understand yesterday. And if you do not understand these rules of attribution, you cannot hold the state responsible for the commission of any act, which is a breach of international law. So if you have any question till now on the rules of attribution, please ask me, because now I will take up some cases relating to these things that we have studied till now. So you can unmute yourself for 2 minutes. Hello. Hello. Yes, anybody listening to me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So do you have any questions till now?
Trying to find.
Okay, so you find your questions. I am now going to start the cases. Some of the cases perhaps you might have studied. I had told you yesterday to read some cases. Have you studied any cases? Nobody has studied any case?
No, sir.
So you should study, because now you are at your home. So what do? You should study the cases also. Okay, so this morning we will be studying some cases, because then only you will understand the principles that we have tried to explain you. The first is which case? Corfu Channel case. If you look at the Corfu Channel case, you'll find that in this case what happened, that some of the warships of Britain, they were passing through the Albanian territory. Albanian territory means Albanian territorial waters. What is the Albanian territorial waters? Albanian territorial waters mean that very close to the coastal area. So if you have gone to some sea beaches, so after the sea beach starts, the water starts, then up to 12 nautical miles. I will discuss about all these things, maritime zones, when we will start discussing law of the sea. So what happened in that case, that in the Corfu Channel case, what happened, that the Albanian territorial waters, it was having mines in its that maritime zone. And so what happened, that when the British warships were coming, they did not know that territorial waters of Albania, it was having those mines. No? Sometimes you might be playing that play on video, mine sweeping. Do you play that game?
No, sir.
No, sir. Okay. So sometimes I used to play that game when you could sweep the mines and then clear the mines. So that was the kind of video game, but it was not the video game in this case. In the Corfu Channel case, what happened, that the Albanian territorial waters, that was having those mines which are very dangerous. Once you touch it, or if there is some kind of appearance of kind of touch, then it will explode. And that happened, that the UK warships got exploded, and it was a huge damage to the British warships, and the matter went to International Court of Justice, and it was one of the first judgments of International Court of Justice. This was decided by International Court of Justice in 1949. And the contention of Albania was that it did not lay down the mines. Right? Whereas the contention of UK was that even if Albania did not lay down the mines itself, Albania had the knowledge that mines might be present there. And United Kingdom, it produced so many communications received by the Albanian government to the United Nations that mines may be there in the Albanian territorial waters. And therefore, United Kingdom was contending before the court that if you look at the elements of international responsibility of a state, you will find that if a state has even omitted to do something, sometimes a state has committed something, sometimes a state may omit to do something. In that case also, state may be held responsible. And at that moment of time, International Law Commission Draft Code was not there. But if you look at now to the draft code, you'll find that Article 2, opening paragraph says that there is an internationally wrongful act of a state when conduct consisting of an action or omission, right? So the conduct can be an action or an omission, both. So if there is an omission, in that case, Scotfish Channel case, what happened? That United Kingdom was contending that there was an omission on the part of Albania not to inform the United Kingdom when its warships were coming. And as you all know, that warships are very, very vital. And UK was also contending that the Albanian territorial water is not, it's not simply exclusive territorial waters of Albania, but it was some part of that territorial water is forming a strait, which is international strait. And international strait is a kind of, highway on the sea. So therefore, what happened that ultimately the judges of International Court of Justice, they were convinced and they held that Albania was responsible in this case. So Albania was held responsible. Albania is a state. Do you know where is Albania? Will tell me.
Sir, in Europe.
Yes.
In Eastern Europe.
Very good.
Southeastern Europe. Southeastern Europe.
Wonderful.
Same.
Yeah. So if you look at the map in geography in Atlas, you'll find that nearby Albania there is a passage which connects the whole Europe to the southeast Europe, South Europe to southeast Europe. So that passage was considered to be very vital for UK and for all the international community. And therefore, what happened that in this case, ICJ held that Albania was responsible because this was an act of omission. Okay. If you have any question on this case, please ask. No question? All right.
No, sir.
Okay. So now we are moving on to the next case, which is Iranian case. That is not given in your study material, perhaps fully, but the name of the judgment you can find out. The name of the judgment is Case Concerning U.S. Diplomatic and Consular Staff in Tehran.
It's there, sir.
Yeah. So, Case Concerning U.S. Diplomatic and Consular Staff in Tehran. This is the case which was decided by International Court of Justice in 1980. And this was the preliminary stage of the case, which was decided in 1980. This case was decided on merits later on. So in this case, what happened that, yeah, this is a very interesting case. Have you read this case? Anybody who has read this case? Nobody? Yeah, so some of the cases are means all the cases are very interesting. Only that is the reason why the cases are there in your study material. And still you don't study. Have you watched a movie on this very case, which has won Oscar awards?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, very good. Which one is that?
Argo.
Yes, very good. So watch Argo movie. You'll find that the whole story is very good, very well depicted in this movie. What is that? The case name is Consular Diplomatic Staff in Tehran. If you remember, or somebody might have told you in some stories, that what happened in 1979 and 80, that in Iran, what happened, that there was a revolution in 1979. And that revolution was against the Western ideas which had taken firm roots in Iran. Because after First World War, what happened? That the Britishers and the French people, they had divided Iran into their mandates. And after First World War and after Second World War, what happened? That they tried to put a puppet government so that everything they would be exploiting from Iran. And therefore, the people of Iran took part in a revolution, and which was successful in 1979. After which, what happened, that the whole Western ideas, those were rejected, and a very reactionary kind of government that came to power. And that government was influenced by religion mainly. So you might have heard about Ayatollah Khomeini, who is a religious leader and who is still holding power. So you see that this is the background of this case. And what happened, that in 1979, when these people, they came to power, they very much disliked United States. Why? Because the earlier despotic ruler of Iran, whom the people of Iran did not like, that ruler was given asylum in the United States. And that is why people of Iran, they disliked US, that the person who was so much, a tyrant, and he was given asylum in US. So what happened, that a day came when militia, and militia were like students. The students were also, generally any revolution, the foundation of any revolution is in the students' hands. So students, they took up the lead, and they overthrew the earlier government. So in this case, if you look at the events which unfolded in the winter of 79, you'll find that many of these militia composed of the students of Iran. They were from universities, they were from College of Tehran, and they formed a large, huge group. And then they forced their entry into the US embassy. And you might have heard in some stories that what they did, that they held all the people who were there in the US embassy as hostages. So now this event went on. It was, a great kind of experience for the US embassy people, because perhaps more than a year they were held hostage inside the US embassy. Some of them they were transferred to some of the ministry's offices, but then they were held hostage. So they were confined to a particular small place. Now, in that very background, what happened, that United States was also not happy, because as a country and as a superpower, it must not be happy. So what it did, that initially you might have watched the movie Argo. In Argo, what happened, that peacefully, the CIA agents came and peacefully they evacuated 6 people who were taking shelter in the Canadian embassy. But what happened to the other hostages? And then you find that ultimately US also launched an operation, and then ultimately it took away all the hostages from Iran. So it set them free, but this was by use of force. And therefore, if you look at the US operation in April of 1980, it was the use of force in Iran, in the Iranian territory. So what happened that when this case went before International Court of Justice, both the parties, Iran as well as US, they were holding each other responsible. One was saying that this was a breach of international responsibility, it was the breach of international obligation. Other country was also saying that this was a breach of international obligation. What is your opinion? What should happen? What should happen? Anybody is there? Anybody is there who can say something? What should happen in this case?
Sir, both breached international obligation.
Very good. Both the parties breached international obligation. So how can you say that both the parties breached the obligations?
Sir, first students attacked on the embassy, and second US by using force saved its members.
Very good. So in this case, if you have to look at the ILC Draft Code, how will you argue? Looking at the ILC. So you look at the ILC Draft Code, then how will you argue? Because in the court, you'll have to also base your arguments on the laws. So how will you
Sir,
say?
on the basis of Article 2, it consists of an internationally wrongful act of a state. So from both the sides, it was commitment of an wrongful act.
Yeah. Yeah. So in this case, Iran was saying that the Iranian government did not do anything. That was
So
the
pardon?
Iran. So as the counsel, what will you argue? If you are the counsel of US, how will you argue?
So it was duty of Iran to protect the embassy.
Yes, it was the duty. And was that duty observed?
No.
Yes. So what was that? Whether it was an act or omission?
So, both.
Omission, yes. So you should have used this word. This was an omission on the part of Iran. Because if you might have visited many embassies in Delhi, you might have seen that what is the level of security there. And the outside security is in the hands of the host state. And therefore, this was the contention of US that Iran as a state failed to protect the embassy officials because the police were also not there. And it's very difficult for the police people also. When the huge mob will come and then attack embassy, it's very difficult. So only military could have been called, but military also was not called by the government because government was also supposedly in collusion with the militia. So in this case, what US was saying, that Iran was also responsible. Why? Because Iran omitted to do anything. So it was an act of omission. And therefore, if you look at Article 2 now, because in that time, ILC Draft Code was not there. So during those times, they based their arguments on the existing treaties. Like there was a treaty of amity and friendship between Iran and US. So what Iran was saying that, and what US was also contending, that this is a violation of both the parties. They have violated the obligations in the treaty. So, this was the case in which. So now we will be moving on to the next case, which is Nicaragua case. The full name of the case is Military and Paramilitary Activities in and Against Nicaragua. This is also a very interesting case because this is also relating to the whole era of Cold War. You see, if you remember the Cold War, you'll find that during the Cold War, what happened, that the whole world was divided into two ideological groups. First was aligned with US, others were aligned with USSR. Now, in that backdrop, all these cases also should be understood, because otherwise you might not be knowing about the implications of the Cold War, because all of you have not seen or might have known about the Cold War. So Cold War continued from the end of the Second World War till 1989. Right. So this was again the case, Nicaragua case was in that very backdrop. What happened that in Nicaragua, do you know where is Nicaragua? Will tell me.
So in southern US, I think.
Very good.
So I'm not sure, but it should be in Latin. It should be one of the Latin American
Latin
countries.
American countries.
In the middle of North America and South America.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So you mute yourself.
Okay. So you mute yourself.
Yeah. So what I was telling you, that Nicaragua case is the case when in Nicaragua, which is a Latin American country, just if you, it is like a intestine of US. So the large intestine is going downwards like that. So Nicaragua is also one kind of small country, but it was aligned with initially obviously with US, but late in the 70s, it started to align with the USSR. So if you look at this case is given in your study material. You should read this case. If you look at the case, what happened, that Nicaragua experienced a change of the government, and that change of the government was there in the 1979. And what happened, that before 1979, the government was pro-US. And after 1979, the new government which came to power was not pro-US. And supposedly it was pro-USSR. So what happened, that initially, when US did not know that the new government was pro-USSR, then it had also given help in the form of some kind of aid to Nicaragua. But the moment it found that Nicaragua was not with the US, rather it is going towards USSR. At that moment of time, it was disappointed. And later on, what happened, that it started to fund those people or those groups who were against that government. And the government was Sandinista government. So this Sandinista government was called BT Noire of US, because Sandinista was not happy with the policies undertaken during the earlier regimes. And he was thinking that, he was of the opinion that Nicaragua should follow a different path altogether. And so what happened, that US was doing some act by which it not only funded, but later on in the 80s, what happened, that it also started giving training to those people who were against the Sandinista government. And those people were called Contras. So they, in the local language, they Contras. So because in Nicaragua, the language is Spanish. So if you look at this case, what happened, that when Nicaragua found that US was giving not only some kind of financial aid, but also it is giving trainings, and it was giving weapons to those militia. And so what happened that that my daughter is calling me. Yeah. So what happened, that in this case, Nicaragua case, Nicaragua went to International Court of Justice. And what happened, that Nicaragua contended before International Court of Justice that this was the breach of international obligation on the part of US. And if you look at the judgment, this judgment was rendered by one of the Indian judges who was there at the time. And the name of the judge, can somebody tell me who was the judge in this case from India? Anybody who can say? Yes, Rajneesh. Yeah. Your voice is not clear. All others may mute yourself. Yeah, your voice is not coming. Hello.
Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm not.
Am I hearable, sir?
No.
Sir, am I hearable?
No.
Okay, sir. Okay. I am trying to. Now,
Yeah. Hello.
hello.
There might be some problem at your end, perhaps.
I don't know, sir, because there is some technical problem. I think. All I can hear is hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Jagdish, yeah. Yes.
I was just saying, I'm not sure, but there are only few judges that have been designated as judges in the International Court of Justice. So one of them was Narendra Singh. He is CPI Narendra Singh or something. Is it so?
Your voice is not coming properly.
Okay, so then please do continue.
Yeah, can you hold
Hello?
for some time, because maybe that after some time.
I'm holding. Please continue. I don't know what is the problem.
Yes, yes, there may be
Hello?
some problem at some end.
I don't know whether it's central problem or local problem. I will get my answer.
Yes, yes. So please hold on for some time.
Sure.
Yeah. So you mute yourself.
Sure, I'm holding. Yes.
Yeah. So what I was telling you, that this is the next case that we are going to take up, which is Nicaragua case. Nicaragua case, what happened that United States started funding, and not only funding, but also military activities and paramilitary activities against Nicaraguan government of the time. And therefore what happened that Nicaragua went to International Court of Justice. Small country goes to International Court of Justice against United States, which is which was the superpower at that moment of time, and even today. So in this case, the judge from India was Justice Nagendra Singh. Nagendra Singh. And Justice Nagendra Singh was very firm to say in this judgment that there was a breach of international obligation by United States. And why did he say so? He said so because of the fact that Nicaragua was able to assert before the court that the United States government controlled these people who were Contras. You see, because if you look at the ILC Draft Code, in the ILC Draft Code, it was made clear, after this judgment, it was made clear in Article 8 that if a country has control over the private people, in that case also the country can be held responsible. There can be attribution of the conduct of the private people onto the government. So in this case, what happened that US was arguing in the court that we have not done anything wrong, which is a breach of any international obligation. But Nicaragua was saying that no, what you are doing, you are not only funding might be okay, it might have been, remotely acceptable. But in this case, what you are doing, that you are also passing a law by which you are funding. And two, that you are also sending weapons. You are also giving training to the people who are performing paramilitary activities and who are against the government. So, and what Nicaragua was saying that United States was in control of all these people. Now, this was accepted by Nagendra Singh as he was the president of ICJ. And what he said, that in this case, United States breached international obligation by sending the Contras, by training those people, by sending weapons to those people, and United States was therefore responsible to do all these things. If I take you to the portion of the judgment, I will tell you to study paragraph number 106, starting from 106, 109. You should read these paragraphs in your study material. The court says that in the light of the evidence and material available to it, the court is not satisfied that all the operations launched by the Contra force reflected the strategy and tactics wholly devised by the US.
So page number.
So I am not sure which is the page number, but you look at paragraph 106. It may be like 82, 84, 85, 86, 87, like that.
Page 74. So
74. Okay. Yeah. Good. And then you look at paragraph 108. And then you look at paragraph 188. So if you study these paragraphs, you will find that what the court finally held in paragraph 242, what the court says, that the court finds that the support given by the US up to the end of September 1984 to the military and paramilitary activities of the Contras in Nicaragua by financial support, training, supply of weapons, intelligence, and logistic support constitutes a clear breach of the principle of non-intervention. Okay? Have you seen this paragraph? Paragraph 242.
Yes, sir.
Good. So in this case, what happened that Nicaragua was successful in holding United States responsible for this military and paramilitary activity against the Sandinista government of the day. And on this basis, you see, when all the judgments came out, yeah.
Sir, who was held responsible?
Yeah. Shubh, are you saying something?
Sir, I'm asking who was held responsible?
US was held responsible.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. So after this case was decided, then you see that this ILC draft code, which was agreed. Yeah, hello? Anybody who is asking some question? Okay, nobody. So what I was telling you that in the ILC draft code, if you look at Article 8 now, look at Article 8 now. What does Article 8 says? It says that the conduct of a person shall be considered an act of state if the person or the group of persons is in fact acting on the instruction of or under the direction or control of that state in carrying out the conduct. This is Article 8. Okay? And in 1 year, I had asked a question that suppose if Pakistan sends some people who are not ISI agents, but who are like people who have been trained by Pakistan, but they are all private people, and they have been sent to India, and they are engaged in disruptive activities against the sovereignty of India. So, can in this case Pakistan be held responsible? Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So then, in while writing the answer of this question, you must write Article 8, because Article 8 says that if the conduct of even a private person is controlled by the state, then the state may be held responsible, because that act is attributable onto the state. And this whole law has been framed on the basis of Nicaragua judgment. That in Nicaragua, what happened, that the court held that it depends upon the extent of control. What is the extent of control exercised by a state? In that case, whether US was able to direct the Contras to do in a particular way, to act in a particular way, whether United States was having the control over the Contras. So if these two things were established, then it could be said that US can be held responsible. US was saying that no, it was not the US state as such, therefore US should not be held responsible. But Nicaragua forcefully argued, and it was accepted by the court, that in this case, even though United States military, they did not directly intervene, but they had done those acts by which they could control those Contras, because they were financially supporting them, they were training them, they were sending weapons, and therefore they were under the control of US. And therefore, ultimately what happened, that this was a test which was laid down, that how can you hold a state responsible even when the conduct is not the conduct of the organ of the state, or the entity which is exercising authority of the government. So in that case, what happened, that in this case, a new test was laid down. That was the control test, that if US or any country could control the acts of a private person or a group of persons, in that case, what will happen, that the state may be held responsible. Very important judgment. Nicaragua case, you must read this case. Although I have asked questions particularly related to this case, but maybe that you should read all other rules of attribution, Article 8 also, Article 7 also, 6 also, 5 also, and 4 is the very easiest one. So till now, if you have any questions, please ask. Otherwise, I will now.
Sir,
Yeah.
excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, one question. Sir, in Article 8, these persons or group of persons can be from any state.
Yes. So they may be from even the state in which the people are citizens. So even the people like from, if there is a disruptive activity continuing in India, even people from India, they can be there, but they must be controlled by other state. If they are controlled by the other state, then other state may be held responsible. So in Nicaragua judgment, the people were mostly from Nicaragua. They were not United States citizens. Okay.
Even these people or group of people can be from any other country, any other.
any other country. But in that case, what will happen that if the group of people are from 10 different countries, then it will be very difficult to prove the responsibility of 10 different countries. So as a lawyer, as a prudent lawyer of tomorrow, what you should do, that you should pick up one particular state from which most of the people are coming from, or most of the people are being directed, or most of the people are being controlled.
Okay, sir.
Yes. So any other question? Yeah. So today what we have learned some of the cases on the principles of attribution, rules of attribution, and what we have seen that Article 2 combined with Article 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, they will give you a new understanding that how can a country be held responsible. When we meet next time, we will discuss the consequences of the breach of international obligation. How can you, so we have, till now we have seen how can you hold a state responsible. But when we meet next week, we will start that once a state is held responsible, then what is the result? So can a state be fined? Can a state be asked to pay compensation? So what are the things which result after the state is held responsible? So this we will discuss in the next class, and in the next class I'll finish this topic number 4, which is state responsibility. If you have any doubts till Tuesday, you please reserve all those doubts, and I will clear all those doubts, and then finally I'll try to finish this chapter on Tuesday. All right?
Sir, what about this case, Barcelona traction, light and power?
Yeah, Barcelona traction, light and power case, that also we'll discuss in the next class.
Okay, sir.
Okay. If you have any
Okay,
question, all students, please unmute yourself for 1 minute. But once one student will ask question, please unmute others. Please mute others, sorry. Yeah. Anybody who has any question? All right. So there is no question. Thank you very much. We will see you
Thank you,
on
sir.
Tuesday.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Stay healthy.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.